Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. Welcome. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for episode 42 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast. And joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with Elise Botiveau. Elise lives in Paris, the City of Lights, and had worked in information technology for 20 years. Even before the pandemic, she left the field of IT to pursue her passion, gastronomy and tourism. Many people said she was crazy to start a business at nearly 50 years old, but Elise is a woman who is true to her heart. She has to follow her passion. Welcome, Elise.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, Elise. It's so great to speak with you. So I must ask, 20 years as an IT professional, what inspired you to make that leap into food and travel? I'd love to hear about this business you've started as you're nearing 50. That's phenomenal.
Thank you. Yes, that's quite a great question. And I have to say, I ask myself that question. I think it's actually finding myself back, and it took the journey was quite a long journey to go back to myself in a way. Food has always been there from the start, I would say. I think my first memory of food, I was about 3 years old, 3.5. My parents took me to, not me, but we went to Paul Bocu's restaurant near Lyon. And Paul Bocuse invited me in his kitchen. Of course, I was 3, and I remember, the only thing I remember is all the cookware, the copper cookware, like shining bright. And this man, tall, with his white hat, it was like phenomenal to me. And it's actually my first memory of food. So that was like 45 years ago. And then there is all the family and reunion around food, like I would say everybody experienced in their lives very much. So food was always there. Then the travel for work, the travels for leisure. Food has always been a way for me to connect people, but also to share, to talk, to exchange, to have joy all the time. And because I have a lot of friends abroad and that I live in Paris, and Paris being the city of lights, as Eric mentioned, a lot of people went to visit. Then I started to really give some tours around the food in Paris, but not just tasting. It was very much about the history of food, the sociology of food, how the food in Paris and in France, but in Paris specifically, evolved through the times and with the different people and different citizens that who live in Paris. In the meantime, of course, I had my job. And after 20 years in the IT business, I got not tired. I mean, there is a lot of reason for me to leave. But at some point, I got very exhausted, up to the point when I had a heart attack. At that point, in the middle of this crisis, personal crisis, when you wake up from that moment, you pause and you think, okay, now things cannot go on the way they were. And I need to do something with my life that actually is making me happy and that makes sense to me. And food to me is really life and happiness. And I think very much at that point, this is what I realized about where I should go and what to do next. That was a turning point. And then I very quickly after that, and when I say very quickly, it's a matter of 3 months, 4 months, then I took an opportunity of a VR, a voluntary redundancy plan in the company to go and leave. And then I knew that I wanted to do something about food and travel and share my passion there. That's how it started really. And then I engaged in this way without really having a proper project. I didn't know whether I was going to go into giving some tours or doing something different. What I knew is that I wanted to go in that direction, and that for that I needed to build a bit some skills around this, although of course I have a lot of business skills from my career and my past experience. But I wanted to learn more about food, travel, and the tourism industry. So I started to go back to school. I went back to school, and I went to pass a degree in tourism. But also I went into a culinary school, which is known for some people. It's a Ferrandi school. And I have also a lot of interest in wine because in France and like in some other countries of the world, wine is important as part of the gastronomy and the food business. So I passed an exam in French wine tasting. That's really how I shifted from my previous business life to this new life. So really, food to me was going back to the roots and going back to life.
Elise, a heart attack is absolutely a reason to have a major turning point in your life. I can't even begin to imagine what that was like. But it sounds like it was a wake-up call, and you found a new path, which is exciting. And you went to culinary school, but you also want to do something in tourism. So how are you going to turn that into your new job? Because I know that cuisine, the study of the culinary arts, is a very specific training that you would do. But then to do tours or to be a guide or a tour operator, that's another different kind of skill set. So how are you going to marry the two ideas together into your new business idea?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and it gave me headaches for quite some time. Well, it was not one or the other. It had, at some point, I thought it had to be the two of them. And France has a great tradition in terms of food, of course. And it's also a country with a variety of opportunities for tourism, whether it's landscape or history and architecture and so on. So I wanted to kind of marry the two of them. So it's about really history and sociology, for instance. So the idea of and the project and what I'm developing right now is to use my previous skills and what I gained during my 80 years to federate and help federating the ecosystems, for DMOs, producers, agencies, tourism offices in developing some products that are unique in merging history, food, but also some other ways like cycling or discovering through a river some regions. So it's really around helping with the processes to federate the ecosystem around a project, but also to enable that with project management skills, and then also help the creation process around product management and offering creations to develop new experiences which are related or which have food as the central place and as the way to discover new things. I think something that is important is also to try to modernize some ways. I'm going to give an example in the wine area. In France, you have the regions and terroir, and you have Burgundy, and you have Bordeaux, or you have Alsace wines. And when today you go and you discover that, very often you go on the road, and very much like you would do in California, for instance. I think it's the way we are looking at a traditional way and a very local why it's a great thing, because it's about identity and the culture, and we need to promote that. But today there are a lot of activities in the wine business in order to use different species of wines, local species of wines, to create new things, either in the biodynamic wines or natural wines that also are interesting for the people, rather to always go back to the past and how the wine was basically done. So the innovation in that area is very interesting, and the transparency it can give to the consumer as well as a tourist discovering new ways in the region to make wine, and is also looking at the future. So to me, it's also trying to support and to develop those experiences, and they are not dedicated for me to to some kind of profiles. I think it's really to support regions, the public sector in some ways in France, but also some companies who want to develop some specific routes around food and wine.
It certainly is an interesting time to start a business, especially in food and travel, Elise. I'm sure that you're building your vision for the company and creating it through this crisis during the pandemic. Can you share how that has influenced your vision for the business, and yeah, what are the opportunities you see?
Yes, it drastically changed. Initially, I was envisioning to do some tours in Paris for mostly for American tourists and for Chinese tourists. So the pandemic arrived at the moment when I was going to test some of the offerings. So really, you could say a very bad timing. I actually think it was the best timing for me to happen, because I had not invested at this point in time financially to create my business. So the risk and the damage was not too big, like it is for many of the companies today struggling. But obviously, with the lockdown in France, we had a lockdown for full lockdown for 2 months. I had to pause and then think, what is it you're going to do now? Are you going to still stick to this? Or are you going to completely change and maybe go back to the IT business? I used the time for really in-depth thinking, and then I really put the project on the table from scratch again. And I said, no, that's really what I want to do. And then with the COVID, the opportunity I saw by reading and then doing some research and listening to the professionals and reading you guys is as well, there is a huge need to look at the domestic customers and to modernize or to change or to renew the portfolio and the offerings. And to me, that was it. My previous job in the IT industry was product manager. So I know how to create a product. I've done that for many, many years. And then with the COVID, it appeared to me that rather than to do what we do, even if we do it very well, there was there an opportunity maybe to think differently and to bring something different to the professionals of the food and the hotel industry and the tourism industry, who are in desperate needs now to get the support with fresh ideas and with people who have the skills in order to support them. So that was the shift to me. I said, okay, you're going to use your skills, your business skills, not to do what already exists and that people do well. You're going to help federating, enabling the food industry, the tourism industry to come together in order to overcome that and come up with new ideas so that we can all together go forward.
You know, Elise, it's interesting that you are looking at what we would say is the silver lining in the cloud of the pandemic. And that is an approach that we've also tried to take here at the World Food Travel Association. We try to look at what can become positive out of this situation. Yeah, it's absolutely the right way to go, because you can use this time to refine your business model and improve things. And like you said, you're not financially invested. So we're telling people now is the time to prepare, innovate, and plan. And that's exactly what you're doing. So it sounds like you're right on track to where you should be.
Yes, there is a lot of work to do, but I think I have overcame the angst that the COVID situation brought to the industry. Now, of course, there is still a long way to go, but I'm almost there. And hopefully the company will be created in the next couple of months, because I'm really in the middle of that. But I know where I'm going. And I'm very eager to now, I was going to say, meet you guys, meet this industry, join the force, and connect with more people in order to work together for the food business.
Coming up on April 15 and 16, 2021 is our Foodtrex Global Summit. Now in its 6th year, Foodtrex Global is our industry's only fully online and global culinary travel trade event. The summit covers trends and issues of interest to owners and managers of all size businesses and destination marketers of all kinds. Get the information you need to take your career or business to the next level. Get more information and register at worldfoodtravel.org.
Elise, you mentioned shifting your demographic towards more of a domestic market. Can you tell us some of the tests you're working on to see how these experiences might pan out?
Domestic travel, especially Paris, if you look at Paris, Paris is suffering greatly from the pandemic because most of the tourists came from abroad. Paris and the region completely need to reinvent itself, definitely short term, in order to be able to drive some growth and business moving forward for the tourism industry. Although, of course, I'm sure the foreigners will come back to visit the City of Lights. But if we look into that, it's how can you and what can you develop interesting for people who live there, and for some of them have lived there their whole life. That is interesting. So I can give an example of what I'm thinking for some business companies, for instance. If you take, and I mentioned the mix I'm looking to develop with history. One of the kings of France, Henry IV, is very famous in France for what he did for the food. And we have a lot of elements around that. So without going too much into the details, but he married in the suburbs of France in a castle that you can visit. And we have the details of the menu of what they had for the wedding dinner, how he took care of his wife, Marie de Médicis, and what she had for dinner. And she was very much into eggs and vegetables, if you like to know. It helps also understanding what was eaten at that point, how hunting process for the kings, for instance. But you can also visit the castle itself. It's very close to Paris. Then if you come back into Paris and you go into really the center of Paris, that is called Les Halles, where the market, the central market was, where you have a lot of food visit and food tours right now. Henry IV was actually killed there. You can talk about the central market and how the provisioning of Paris was made during this time and even throughout history, using Henry IV as a storyline. But you can also discuss and have a wine tasting about Bordeaux wines, because if we have Bordeaux wines today, it's very much thanks to Henry IV, because Bordeaux region was a region of marshes, swamps. And with techniques developed at the time by the Dutch, Henry IV said, okay, let's dry that and get that to grow some vines. So we used the Dutch techniques in order to dry the Bordeaux region, which enables then the Bordeaux wines to grow. And that is Henry IV. And then moving forward, you can also discuss la poule au pot. That is a very traditional meal, which is due to Henry IV, because he basically wanted the French people to eat better in terms of health, and then develop and encourage to have a poule au pot on the Sunday. So through this history example, rather than just taking a visit, but taking that as an example, you can revisit the tours and provide on French history for French people a totally different perspective and learn something with existing topics. So you revisit your own history, your own culture, and rediscover architecture or buildings or even very, very local places through food.
I love that, Elise. I love how you weave food and history so that people can get a real sense of culture and tradition and make them feel more connected to the region they're already living in. I think that's fantastic. Can you tell us some of the obstacles that you faced while doing this now?
Yes, apart from the pandemic, I think the first the first challenge was myself. I think it was to believe that I could do it, and not so much in terms of confidence, but sometimes you are very much in your comfort zone and you stay in your comfort zone. I had a very good job with a very good salary, and why taking the chance? And going back to this moment of the heart attack was the turning point, as I said. And to me, to live is really trying. It is about taking that chance. It's not about staying in the comfort zone. So the first challenge I had to overcome was myself. And I did that. And I think another one that may be specific to France is that I had to build some legitimacy. In France, if somehow, if you want to be on a market, you have to be legitimate for it. So you have either to go through those schools or studies in order to prove that you know what you're talking about. It's sometimes difficult to reinvent yourself without that. So that's why, actually, apart from the passion itself, that's the reason why I took also the courses I mentioned earlier on. The challenges I face today is being probably isolated because of the situation, the pandemic, of course, and then that is somehow delaying some networking opportunities, and being alone to set up a business is always a challenge. So it's more around the feeling of being isolated, but I'm working on developing those connections, so I'm sure it's going to change.
What kind of resources have you been accessing to help you develop your business plan and your ideas? Are there any kind of community college or professional
Mhm.
networks, or what are you doing to help get those extra skills?
I joined an association in France, Force Femmes, so literally women with strength, or strength to women, which is an association helping and assisting the women over 45 to develop their business or to go back to work if they are unemployed. And it's absolutely a fantastic association, because I joined a program that is called Motivated to Create Your Enterprise, where you have a lot of support in terms of workshops, online workshops right now, workshops and individual coaching in order to help you to stay on top. And then, of course, I have also family and friends, and that's very, very important. My family, my dad is still entrepreneur, as well as my sister, and they work with China, both of them. And my mom used to have her own shop, so I can rely to them in terms of assistance for developing some very specific things around the enterprise. And obviously, I know some people in the food business, chef, and in the tourism industry. So it's always important to be able to have conversations with these people to validate some of the options and the test and the way forward.
Elise, shifting gears a little bit, you speak about adopting your daughter as one of the big triumphs of your life. Can you tell us a little bit more about that decision and what led you to it?
Absolutely. I mean, we decided to go through this process because this basically was one of the possible way. The others were much too difficult, and we thought that there are so many kids who need a family, than rather going through a long and difficult biological process. We decided to go through the adoption process rather. So that's a very personal decision. So in no case a decision that is for everybody. I mean, it's really a personal decision. And then we faced the process. And adopting in France is difficult. Not it is difficult because of the process. It's difficult for legal reasons where adoptable kids are quite old already, and if you want a baby, sometimes it's easier to go to international adoption. So we decided to adopt internationally, and I have a daughter who's now going to turn 16 soon, and who's from Haiti. So she's the absolute joy of my life. Yes.
So what's next for you, Elise? Are you going to write a book, or what are your plans for next year? Do you think you'll be able to launch your company?
Yes, my plans really are to launch the company in the next 3 months, 2 to 3 months. And hopefully, some customers, to have some customers. So I have already some prospects, but really to have actual customers, to write articles and to be much more active in the food communities. So hopefully with you guys and with the association, I'm looking forward to it. But yes, the primary objective is really to have this company kicked off, to have the first customer and first customers in, and to get it going and go on with this change of life.
Well, you were talking about how you have some prospects, and I think really the most important thing that anyone can be doing right now is just growing our networks, talking to people, getting the word out there, building your brand, and let people know that you've changed careers, and Elise is a new woman now, a new woman with a new vision.
Elise, what is the name of the company? Is there a website?
Not yet. I'm really literally choosing the name right now. It should be ready. It will be ready for when the podcast probably will be broadcasted. So it should be available by then.
Elise, I think you had an important message to share, especially during these times, for people around the world who are really at a cross point in their lives, trying to decide if they should continue doing what they're doing or take this time to really soul search and reinvent themselves. What is that message that you'd like to share to inspire people?
To me, the message is pretty clear, is don't stay in your comfort zone. Try, do it, because there is no regret in doing this. This is where life is. Life is in trying, not in staying in the comfort zone or being stuck somewhere. Really try. Failing is part of life. And there is no reason why people should fail, because there are many, many people to help you in developing yourself or your business.
Thank you, Elise. That's wonderful and inspiring to us all.
Very succinct as well. Elise, it was a pleasure chatting with you today and learning how you went from a long, successful career in IT, surviving a heart attack, and now using the COVID pandemic as a launch pad to really redefine the rest of your life. So we wish you the best of luck with all your plans. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to enjoying some French food with you next time I'm in Paris.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really looking forward to it. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you, Elise.
Thanks for listening today. The Eat Well, Travel Better podcast is brought to you by the World Food Travel Association, the world's leading authority on food and beverage tourism. Our mission is to preserve and promote culinary cultures through hospitality and travel. By doing so, we empower local communities and entrepreneurs with the knowledge and tools needed to reach new food lovers and gain a competitive edge. Founded in 2003, now each year we shepherd a community of 200,000 professionals in more than 100 countries. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and you can learn more about us, subscribe to our newsletter, and join our family at worldfoodtravel.org. Until next time, eat well and travel better.